Here, PrideTT's management committee spotlights critical segments of issues facing our LGBTQ plus family. This year's theme is Power, which focuses on the struggle and yet power of a woman and their history, which have helped build a movement. We have developed and curated over 30 events aligned with this theme with several community allied partners. We thank them for their friendship. Details on this year's and our archives can be found on our website, PrideTT.com, and all our social media platforms, as well as our PrideTT mobile app. You all know today is our eduQUEER, our health fair. We've been here all day. We had so much fun. We learned a lot. So join me as we continue to learn, and sadly, this is our last segment. We will have more, don't worry, but it's our last for today. I don't know if I have to introduce myself again. You all know me by now. I'm Makisa, the Vice Chairman of UNIPride. We spent all day together. I know you all know me. I want to take this time to introduce our speaker with us tonight. Her name is Jhanah Haynes-Mark. She is a clinical psychologist with a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Missouri, St. Louis, and a Master of Science degree in psychology from Iowa State University. They specialize in treating survivors of trauma, a population with whom they have worked with for the past 13 years. In 2015, after 5 years of working towards starting their own practice, they opened the doors to central psychological services and began to provide quality counseling services to the community. Jhanah is committed to providing mental health care free of judgment to anyone seeking help or seeking to improve their well-being. Hi, Jhanah.
Hi.
So I pass the floor over to you.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I know it's been a long day, but the last is usually the greatest. So let's.
That's for last.
You save the best for last. This is true, right? What I'm gonna do tonight is I'm actually dividing what I want to do into two parts, because we're talking about mental health awareness and we're also talking about suicide. And so I'm gonna start with mental health, go through that whole thing. And then suicide, I'm going to do it kind of separately because it could be triggering for some people. So I want to make sure that everybody who wants to do the mental health stuff can be involved in it. And if you want to check out for the suicide, that's cool. All right. My name is Jhanah. I am a queer, non-binary, educated psychologist. And I've been trying for the longest while to give as much mental health care to the community as I can. I know how hard it is to find good mental health services. And so what I'm going to do today is try to make sure that everybody understands what mental health is about, what mental well-being is about, which is slightly different from mental health. And then we'll focus on what you can do to help yourself and to help others if you're struggling with suicidal thoughts. All right. So let me start with a presentation. Hang on one second. There we go. All right. So today, what we're starting with is mental health awareness. All right. And what is mental health? Right. It's a state of well-being in which every individual realizes his or her or their own potential. That's my bad. I should have put that back in. Can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. All right. And when we're talking about mental health, often we hear people talk about mental well-being. And it kind of sometimes gets conflated, like mental health and mental well-being is the same thing, but it's kind of not. So mental well-being is more than the absence of mental illness, right? And is more than feeling happy. Is the ability to cope with the day-to-day stresses of life, to work productively, to interact positively with others, realize your own potential. So it's like mental health plus is mental well-being. And it takes, you often need to take an active role to get yourself to the mental well-being part. Just being in a mentally healthy place doesn't necessarily equate to mental well-being, right? And if we think about what does that look like, right? It starts with very minor things, I would say. Feeling confident in yourself, building and maintaining positive relationships, having a sense of purpose in life, living and working productively, coping with normal stresses of everyday life, and managing well when things change, right? So for us specifically in the LGBT community, right, we kind of struggle with mental health more than the straight or non-LGBT identifying community, right? And it could be bad sometimes. So we're 2.5 times more likely to experience some form of emotional distress in our lifetimes, which is a lot. That means for basically out of every 6 of us, at least 2, maybe 3 of us will experience some kind of emotional distress in our lifetimes, right? For the teenagers, it's even worse. They're 6 times more likely to experience depression, which is, I think, vast majority. I think there's 1 in 5 is what the actual numbers are. They're twice as likely to feel suicidal, 4 times as likely to attempt as non-LGBT identifying teens. And as you grow older and you get a little more autonomy, it goes down a little, but we still experience suicidal thoughts more often. And we also experience mental health challenges and emotional distress way more often than those who identify as straight, right? And a lot of times people will ask, well, why? Why does this happen? And the answer is one word: stigma, right? As an LGBTQ person, especially in countries where it's not accepted by the vast majority of society, you can experience stigma in every part of your life. You can experience stigma at home, at school, in healthcare services. When you try to get employment, we're usually underemployed, if we're employed at all. Experience it at family gatherings, walking down the street, going into government buildings, trying to get IDs. Stigma is everywhere. And so the fact that you don't feel free to be yourself in society often contributes, often contributes to how society, how mental health plays a part in your life, right? Right, sorry. So we have a top 3 in terms of the types of emotional distress or the types of mental challenges that we normally experience as LGBT. The least of the 3 is anxiety, right? And if you don't know what anxiety is, it's a feeling of nervousness, and it just exceeds what the situation calls for in terms of how you are feeling in the moment, right? And so these are some of the symptoms of having anxiety. You often feel nervous, you could be restless or tense. Sometimes you have a sense of impending danger or panic. Panic attacks can happen. Increased heart rate, so you feel your heart beating out of your chest sometimes. You start breathing rapidly. It may increase to the point of hyperventilation. So that's when you see in movies, they have people breathing into the paper bag because they can't seem to catch their breath, all right? Excessive sweating, trembling, feeling weak or tired, You have difficulty concentrating, difficulty sleeping, digestive issues. So you might have stomach pains, or you might be vomiting a lot, or have difficulty controlling your worry. And avoidance is a big one. You avoid things that trigger your anxiety. So if you're worried about, for example, walking down the street, what you would do is try everything in your power to avoid walking down any street. It doesn't matter what caused the anxiety in the first place. You're like, I don't want to experience that again. So you avoid a lot of things, right? The second of the three is post-traumatic stress disorder, commonly known as PTSD, right? And we experience this in high numbers just because of the number of traumatic incidences that we go through from childhood into adulthood, based on, again, stigma. So people might have experienced it experienced traumatic incidents through maybe violence, maybe family members being excluded in situations at school, being bullied in the workplace. And so PTSD is the second highest emotional, I forget the word, but it basically is the second highest emotional challenge that we experience as LGBTQ people. Now, PTSD includes things like intrusive memories. So intrusive memories would be things like flashbacks, having nightmares about the situation, often feeling as though the situation is happening now, even though it happened at a previous point in time, right? Avoidance again. So if a situation happened in a certain place, sometimes people would avoid that place. They would avoid talking about anything that reminds them of the incident. Or if there were multiple incidents, then the avoidance could get really bad and really tragic, right? Negative changes in thinking and mood, often feeling like, you're not, things are never going to get any better. You might feel like things are going to, like there's nothing positive happening in your life, things like that. And then changes in physical and emotional reactions. So things that did not get you angry before, you might be really angry, on edge, you might be irritable, or you might be emotional in terms of sadness, or you might get numb and nothing affects you anymore. Whether it's sad, it's happy, you just don't feel anything. Right? So these are some of the symptoms of PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder. Right? And the one that we experience in the highest numbers is depression. Right? And I know depression is thrown around a lot, but depression is a really big mental health challenge, right? And is the leading cause of disability worldwide. So not in Trinidad and Tobago, but in more developed countries, depression is treated as a disability. So it's understood that you're not able to work. It's understood that it's a challenge that can really interfere with your functioning on a day-to-day basis, right? At its worst, depression can lead to suicide, right? And there are effective treatments for depression, including medication, psychotherapy, right? So what does depression look like? Right? So because it's so widespread, sometimes it feels as though depression is something that we hear about, we can see people talking about, but we really don't know how to identify either within ourselves or in other people that are close to us, right? And this is what it can feel like if you are depressed. So this is personal. It feels like deep feelings of sadness sometimes, right? Loss of interest in everything, work, social activities, things that used to feel good before, gone. Nothing feels good anymore, right? You have difficulty concentrating. Your thoughts feel like they're taking forever to come together, right? You could have forgetfulness, trouble remembering, trouble making decisions. Sometimes you can't sleep, and sometimes you sleep too much. So people would report both ends of the extreme. You would either not be able to sleep at all, maybe sleeping 1-2 hours a night and wanting to sleep a lot more, or sleeping sometimes 10-15 hours a day, waking up and still wanting to go back to sleep. All right. You feel worthless. You feel like, what's my point in being here? Nothing is good enough. Nothing feels good to me. Energy loss. So you feel tired all the time, right? You can be irritable, have anger, terrible mood swings, or be sobby, like anything makes you cry, whether it's happy, it's sad, or it's just, a dog walking across the road. Sometimes it's just simple as that. And usually there's weight changes or appetite changes. And this again can go in both directions. So you can either start eating a lot more than you used to and gain weight in a short space of time, or you lose your appetite and almost stop eating entirely, or you eat a lot less for every meal and you lose a bunch of weight in a short space of time. So it can look like both ends of the spectrum for this and for the sleeping, right? Now, this is what it would feel like to you. This is, and how it would look to other people. Sometimes we see these things in others and we don't recognize it as depression. We think of it as them just sometimes being lazy, being scatterbrained, they just, it feels like they just don't want to be around people anymore, right? So no social interaction, indifference, they don't care about anything, right? You put things off, you miss deadlines, yeah, you're scattered, you're absent-minded. Procrastination is a big one. And I know all of us talk about procrastination, but it's procrastinating to the point where you're missing stuff, right? You can't decide anything. Nothing is a decision. What do you want to eat? I don't know. What time do you want to leave to get wherever you need to go? I don't know, right? Slow productivity. So you do a lot less in the same amount of time. You're late to everything, feel tired. Accidents are common, right? You can be unsure of your abilities. There's a sudden lack of confidence. So things that you felt like you were good at before, like, no, I'm not sure if I want to do that. I'm not sure if I'm good at it. I'm not sure how people would see me doing it, right? People they're low in motivation. They can be detached. There's inappropriate reactions, strained relationships, and change in appearance. And this change in appearance can be many things. So it can be like people are negligent about their hygiene, or and you could have the noticeable either weight gain or weight loss, right? Or people who would normally put a lot of care into their appearance, they start appearing sloppy, or they show up in a way that that they would never show up before. All right. So now that I've brought you down, let's bring you back up. All right. So we're going to talk about the 5 ways to well-being. And what this is ways that if you feel yourself slipping, or even if you don't, if you feel yourself slipping into an emotional dip, or even if you feel fine and you're like, okay, I want to continue to feel fine, or maybe start feeling even better, these are the 5 things that you can keep doing, or I want to say need to keep doing in order to continue to feel that way or to start feeling better. All right. And people ask, well, why? Why would we do this? Because we could all benefit from looking after our mental health, right? If you do these 5 things on a regular basis, you can build resilience, which means that even though things may be thrown at us in terms of stressors, in terms of changes, big changes in life, we can cope with it really well. It can boost your well-being, make you feel better about yourself, and it offers some protection from you developing mental health challenges, right? And they're beneficial for all of us, whether we have mental health issues or not, right? So I'm going to go through them one by one. The first is to be active. And I know everybody's like, oh, stop telling me to exercise. But the fact is, if you are active, right, it's a great boost of mood for your mind. It's a great boost for your body. It gets rid of all of the stress hormones that get collected in our bodies throughout the day, right? And it's been proven over and over and over again to lower rates of depression, lower rates of anxiety, right? And nobody's telling you to go like join the gym and become a gym rat, right? Obviously, you can't even do that now because all the gyms close. But what you need to do is discover a physical activity that you enjoy and it suits your level of mobility and fitness. So for some people, that is just a walk every evening, right? It could be a brisk walk, it could be a slow walk. The point is you're getting your body moving, right? Go outside. Simple. Just take a walk out of the building, get some sun, get some fresh air, right? People like to ride, play a game, go in your yard, dig out some plants, right? Plant some new ones, make it look nice. Dancing is good. We love to dance as people. And it's a great way to improve your mood, to help you feel better, help you feel good about yourself. So yes, I'm still telling you to exercise. Exercise a little bit every day, right? Another one is to give your time, your words, your presence. So be active. And the second one is give, carrying out acts of kindness, increase your happiness, your life satisfaction, and your general sense of well-being. It makes us feel good to do good things for others, all right? And it's about cultivating a spirit of generosity and doing something nice for somebody just because you want to do something nice for them, right? It's simple. Smile. Smiling increases how well you feel about yourself. Like if you're standing around with a frown all day, I hope that you don't actually feel good. But if you're smiling, the act of smiling helps you to feel better, right? So even if you have to force it sometimes, smile, right? Volunteer time, join a community group, do something that is about more than you, is about something outside of yourself, right? This is one where if anybody practices mindfulness, this is kind of what mindfulness is about. It's just paying more attention to the present, to how you feel now, to how your body feels now, and what's going on in the world around you at this moment, right? So just taking the time to notice all the details of your environment, right? And take your time, basically. Like we always rushing to get wherever we want to go. Like driving in Trinidad is like everybody needs to be somewhere yesterday and they're not trying to get there. But if we take our time, just sit, like maybe if it's somewhere close, instead of driving, take a walk, right? Take an umbrella just in case I get wet. And, just notice the things along the way that you probably wouldn't notice if you would kind of rush into everywhere you needed to go, right? Connecting is about interacting with other people socially, building relationships with friends, with family, others who will support you and enrich you every day, right? And when times are hard, these are the people that will help pull you through it, right? So these are the people who will prevent you from going into a shell, who will dig you out of a jam, right? That's who you want to connect with. And you also want to be there for them. So it's important not only to talk, but to listen, right? To hear what's going on in other people's lives, as well as letting other people know what's going on in yours, right? And the last one is to keep your brain sharp, keep learning, embrace new experiences, kind of don't allow yourself to get into a rut, which I'm saying this now and thinking COVID has basically put all of us in a rut. But when COVID is over, whenever that may be, I would encourage you to try new things. try new experiences. Don't just go get into the habit of going to work or to wherever you go on a daily basis, going back home, right? Meet new people, try out new hobbies, these kinds of things, right? If you do this, and if you notice, all of these are connecting with a different part of you. So active is physical, giving is about emotional, right? Paying attention. I can't even think about what that is right now, but the point is connecting is social, learning is about keeping your brain sharp, right? So you're checking in with all of the parts of yourself in order to improve how you as a whole being feel on an everyday basis. All right. That's all I have for well-being. Does anybody have any questions? I don't know if any questions came through the chat while I was talking. Casey?
Sharon said like planting, no, sorry, Kevin said like planting a garden. Sharon said baking.
Baking. Yes, I know Sharon has taken up becoming a baker lately.
Yep.
That is her thing. And she's not sharing it. She only sharing it with certain people, but we won't talk about that.
I've noticed that as well. I'm glad it's not me alone.
Sure. All right.
I was going to type my response, but I am eating some purple rainbow bread right about now with some tuna. So whatever. I love you, ladies.
Wow, Sharon. Thank you.
So even now, all she's doing is showing off and not sharing.
As usual.
Right? So the second part of the presentation, oh gosh, and she turned on the camera. So I'm giving a huge trigger warning for the next part of the presentation, right? And after this, y'all, we are here for 2 hours, and I'm not gonna talk for 2 hours. So I would appreciate it if y'all would send in your comments, send in your questions. There are lots of myths that I don't even know about anymore because I'm so like, I don't believe that. But there are people that still do. So ask a question so that I can debunk anything that you are still thinking right now, hopefully, and help you to come to a better understanding of mental health, get rid of some of the stigma so people are encouraged to go and get help if they need it. And people are also encouraged to encourage others to get help if they see them struggling, right? So that's my little caveat. Yes, so trigger warning, we're going to talk about suicide. We're going to talk about suicide in others, and we're going to talk about suicide feelings in yourself. So if this is sensitive to you, I'm just letting you know that it's happening, and it's okay. You can jump off and come back on later when we hit the comments and questions section. All right. So not sure, would y'all prefer me to talk about suicide in yourself first or suicide in other people? Just a quick poll. Anyone? Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'll talk in suicide and other.
Myself, suicide and self.
Suicide and self first?
Yes, please.
Right. Okay. So, as we saw in the presentation earlier, oftentimes if depression is left untreated, or if things become too overwhelming or too stressful, or you feel like you're mired in problems that just seem to not be going away, there comes a time where suicide may come into your mind as like, this is a way out, right? This is a way to stop feeling the pain. This is a way for my problems to go away. This is a way for just me to not have to experience whatever I'm experiencing anymore, right? And if you're thinking about it, it can seem overwhelming, it can seem permanent, right? But there definitely are ways to cope with it. And there are ways to not get to the point where you feel like, okay, I'm doing this today, right? So there's some things to remember. And I think the first thing is the most important, is that your emotions are not fixed. They're constantly changing. So you might feel one way today, but that's not going to be the same as how you felt yesterday or how you feel tomorrow or next week. So suicide is often what we call it is a permanent solution to a temporary problem, right? And even though you may not see the solution right now, if you give yourself some time, maybe get some help, talk to someone, there will come a point where the solution will show up, right? So remember that your emotions will change, even though it feels different right now. The second thing to remember is that your absence would cause grief and anguish in the lives of friends and loved ones. No matter how you think they feel about you right now, your absence is going to be worse, right? There are many things you can still accomplish in your life. And it's important to remember that what has happened before does not inform what's going to happen next, right? There are sights, the fourth thing is there are sights, sounds, and experiences in life that have the ability to delight and lift you, and you would miss them if you weren't here, right? And the fifth thing to remember is your ability to experience pleasurable emotions is equal to your ability to experience distressing emotions. Right now, it might feel as though what you are experiencing is the only thing that you can experience. And what I want you to try to remember in that moment is that you can also experience positive things, that things can also be better for you. And you can also feel happy, you can also feel positive, all right? Because once suicide thoughts start occurring, it feels as though negative is the only thing that's happening right now, right? So there are many kinds of emotional pain that can lead to thoughts of suicide. And it's different for everybody. And the ability to cope is different for everybody, right? But there's some common things that may lead us to experience suicidal thoughts and feelings, right? And if you are feeling suicidal right now, there's 5 steps. Everything is 5. 5 steps that I want you to follow, right? The first step is promise not to do anything now, right? So if you're thinking about right now, like, I want to end this pain right now, I want you to make a promise to yourself or make a promise to somebody really close to you that you value, that right now is not the time. You know, give yourself some time in between thoughts and actions. Tell yourself, I'll wait a day, I'll wait a week. I won't do anything drastic for the next 3 days. It doesn't matter when you put it off to, I want you to just promise to put it off, right? Thoughts and actions are different. So your thoughts don't have to become a reality, right? Put some distance between your suicidal thoughts and your suicidal actions, right? Second thing, avoid drugs, avoid alcohol, right? Both of these things tend to make suicidal thoughts even stronger, and they tend to take away your ability to do the thing that we talked about in step 1, which is to wait a little. It becomes something that you want to do right now. All right, so stay away from, if you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling suicidal at all, stay away from drugs, stay away from alcohol, because they tend to make things worse, even though in the moment you might think that they're making things better. Right? The third thing that I need you to do is to make your home safe. So remove anything that you could use to hurt yourself. Pills, knives, razors, and if there are any firearms in the house, definitely remove them, right? If you can't take away everything that makes your home safe, go somewhere where you can feel safe, right? excuse me, sorry, if you're thinking of taking an overdose, for example, clear out your pill cabinet, right? Or give them to somebody who can give them to you as needed. So somebody who can give you, so you don't store up on, if you have antidepressants, if you have anti-anxiety medication, even regular pills like Panadol, ibuprofen, somebody who can give them to you just when you need them. So somebody you trust who is not going to be like, here, take all 5 or take the whole bottle. I'm tired of answering your call whenever you need medication, right? The 4th step is to talk to somebody, right? And it could be anybody. It could be a family member, a friend, a therapist, some religious leader, a family doctor, anybody, right? Somebody that you can trust. Tell them how bad it is. The worst thing that you can do if you're feeling suicidal is to keep it to yourself, right? It's not a shameful thing. Don't worry about how it looks. Don't be afraid or don't be embarrassed, and let somebody else know who can either somebody who can help you themselves, or they can help you get to somebody who can help you, right? Sometimes the first person you talk to doesn't react very well. We all know this. They'll tell you something that makes it a little worse, or they'll tell you something that makes you feel misunderstood or unheard. Move on. Try a different person, because often there will be somebody in your life who can help you, who can deal with it, who can talk to you in a way that helps you deal with your suicidal feelings, right? And the 5th step seems like the hardest, because it's about being hopeful and remembering that people do get through this, right? People who feel badly, people who feel horrible, people who feel like things will never get better, just like you may be experiencing right now, they survive and they work through whatever is going on for them, and they get better, right? No matter how hopeless it feels, no matter how much you hate yourself right now, no matter how lonely or isolated you feel, give yourself the time to do better, and don't try to do it by yourself, right? Help is out there, and it can get you to the point where you're like, okay, even though it might not feel 100% better right now, I can see the end. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, right? Now, if you experience it, you might be like, okay, so what do I say? What do I tell somebody? Because I need to tell them in a way that's not going to scare them off, that's not going to make them think I'm crazy, right? So the first thing is to tell people exactly what you're telling yourself, right? So if you have a plan, explain it to them, right? If you are saying, well, I don't feel like I want to be here anymore. I feel like my life is miserable. It's over, right? Whatever you're telling yourself, tell that to the person that you trust so that they can understand exactly what's going on in your head, right? Tell them you can actually use the word suicide. Tell the person that you are thinking about suicide. Like, I'm thinking about dying. I am thinking about hurting myself, right? Or if you can't speak the words, because sometimes they're too hard to throw out there, write it down. Give them a note, write them a letter, send them an email, send them a text, send them a WhatsApp message, send them a DM on Instagram. Doesn't matter. The point is, get those thoughts out of you and reaching out to somebody else, right? Now, if you're having suicidal thoughts and feelings, it's important to talk to somebody every single day, right? So I know sometimes it feels like, oh gosh, I feel like a burden in them, like I'm telling them that something that's going to bring them down, right? And so sometimes it might help to have multiple people that you talk to. So you don't feel like you're burdening people, and you're giving them something that they want to that they're going to feel hurt by or feel depressed by every single day. But you need to have a conversation or write a note or send a message with someone every day, check in, ask people to spend time with you, or talk to a counselor or a therapist about how you're feeling, right? The second thing is to make a safety plan. Now, a safety plan is something that you put in place ahead of time so that if it gets to crisis mode, like I want to do something right now, there's something somewhere where people can be involved and intervene quickly once you start that tree, right? So a safety plan would involve who to call, right? Would involve what we talked about before, like clearing the house of any kind of lethal or, oh, I forgot to talk about people in Trinidad often use poison as a means of committing suicide. So any kind of weedicide, things that you could buy in the agricultural shop that you could use to hurt yourself. And these are even more lethal than some of the other ones that people tend to use, right? So you might get to the hospital but still not make it a few days later, right? So definitely clear those things out of your house, the gramazone, the lanate. So that's part of your safety plan, clearing those things out of your home, right? Having a list of people to call. So if the first person doesn't answer, you call the second. If the second person doesn't answer, you call the third, right? Having a plan in case you need intervention in terms of going to an emergency room, right? To prevent yourself, or if you thought about it, like you're thinking about, for example, taking pills, cutting yourself, and like I said, drinking bleach, lanate, or gramazone, which are some of the three most common that people usually do in Trinidad. Sometimes it's better to just take yourself to the hospital and explain what's going on right away, right? And have them intervene and get you the help that you need. So calling somebody who will take you there, or calling the ambulance and letting them come and get you, right? So that's your safety plan, right? Oh, it should also include numbers for a doctor and or a therapist if you have one, just to make so that the person that you call can also call them and inform them of what's been going on, right? Make a written schedule for yourself every day and stick to it. Try to keep as regular a routine as possible. Try to wake up the same time, eat around the same time, do pleasurable or leisurely activities around the same time, so that sticking into a routine becomes easier and you don't have to think about, well, what do I do now? And there's not this kind of empty space stretching where your thoughts about what's going on and the things that are stressing you out can get into your day, right? So if your feelings are out of control, routine kind of helps give you some semblance of order. And you feel like you can manage your feelings a little bit better when you have a regular routine, right? Go outside. We mentioned this before. Go out into the sun. It sounds wacky, but the sun actually improves our mood. And so us being inside so much of the day now, and very rarely being able to be out in the sunshine and feeling the warmth. I mean, don't go and get burned in the sun, right? But go outside for at least a half an hour and soak up some sun, get some vitamin D. It really improves your mood. Trust me, it works. All right. Talked about exercise before. Exercise as much as is safe for you. So obviously, if you have any injuries, don't exercise more than you're physically capable of doing. And also, If you're not accustomed to exercising a lot, don't try to do really intense exercise to start with. Start with something moderate and work your way up. But exercise actually really helps to get you out of that. Funk is a bad word, but get you out of the mood that you're in, where it feels hopeless and it feels down and never ending, right? And try to make time for things that make you feel happy. Try to make time for things that bring you joy, even if in the moment it feels like they're not bringing as much joy as before. The fact that they're there will help. I promise you that. All right. And remember your personal goals, right? So there are things that you would have wanted to do in life that you may not have been able to accomplish as yet. And these things tend to get pushed aside when things get stressful and when feelings get dark and hopelessness starts to set in. But I think it's important to put these things somewhere, put them on your mirror, set them in your phone as like, this is a plan that I have. I want to travel. I want to finish school. I want to, I don't know. What are some people's plans these days? Right? But the point is, think about what would be a goal for yourself, something that you envision as making you feel good, making you feel happy, making you feel content. And remember that those goals still are there waiting for you to accomplish them. And you're not going to accomplish them if you're not here. Right? Ooh. Right? So those are things that you should do. These are things that you shouldn't do. Right? So trying to spend as little time alone as possible. If you need to maybe spend some time with a friend, if you live alone, maybe spend some time home with your family, or have somebody come and spend some time with you. Being alone is one of the worst things that you can do, because it's when your thoughts kind of move into your head and they tend not to leave because nobody's there to distract you. All right. Again, avoid alcohol, avoid drugs. I can't stress this enough. Alcohol makes it seem as though your problems will never have a solution. And there are certain drugs that make you feel the same way. I don't want to be like, well, certain drugs are good and certain drugs are bad, so avoid all. Unless you're prescribed medication, then you're supposed to take that. All right. And only in the amount that it's prescribed. Don't take any more and don't stop taking it. All right. Don't do things that make you feel worse. So we have a tendency when we're not feeling good to put on like the saddest, most depressing music ever and like cry it out, which is fine when you're not depressed all the time anyway. Right? Sorry?
Yeah, when you're okay, yeah, that's cool, but not when you're having like that episode, it just amplifies things.
Exactly, it just makes it way worse, right? So don't do things that make you feel worse. Don't like, also for example, like often a breakup would trigger like a mini depression or maybe even a major depressive episode. Don't be going back and looking at pictures of your ex and all the things that y'all used to do. And you know, when you're already feeling down, like this person has moved on, and looking at this is going to make you feel like, well, why am I even here? So don't do that, right? Let's see. Don't read old love notes, especially. Oh my goodness, those are the worst. And try to, like, if it was brought on by some form of grief, like things that you probably should avoid at this point is looking at old photographs of that person, visiting the grave. WhatsApp chat, Sharon says. I'm not sure if that's like to avoid or to go back into. Oh yeah, rereading WhatsApp chats. That's true.
Chats, yeah.
Don't go back and reread like 6 years of chats. Oh my goodness. That is depression 101, right? And yeah, all of those things can make, if you were only thinking about it, it will make those thoughts just get even worse, right? And try not to become preoccupied with suicide and with death. So oftentimes if people are suicidal, what they'll do is they'll do a lot of research into suicide. They'll do a lot of research into death, what happens after you die, how different ways to die. They'll do research on like, basically they become really, really morbid at this point in time. And if you are experiencing this and you recognize in yourself, like, I'm just researching really morbid things, it's time to stop, right? Kind of delete that from your history, delete it from your search history, and try to not be tempted to go and do that all over again, right? Because all that does is it desensitizes you and it makes you feel as though death is okay right now when it's not, right? So how can you recover? All right, so we talked about what not to do, what to do. And wait, did I miss out anything in terms of, does anybody have any questions about what we talked about before? No? Okay, cool. So what do you do to try to feel better, especially when you're suicidal, right? The first thing is to identify triggers. So a lot of times there will be something like, you might be coping fairly okay. You might be depressed, yes, but coping. And something will set you off and hit you into a downward spiral. And what is important to identify is what started that downward spiral. Where did that come from, right? And if we identify those triggers and either avoid them if possible, or if not, kind of prepare for them and learn how to handle them, then suicide tends to become less and less of an option. It occurs to you less often, because now you see where there's an out, you see where there's a way that you can handle situations without it becoming so overwhelming, right? So things that common triggers, especially if your depression was caused by like a relationship or death or some kind of loss, right? The anniversaries are usually pretty bad. So anniversary of the loss, anniversary of the relationship, birthdays, Christmas, just any time where you would spend a significant amount of time together would usually be a trigger for you feeling down on that particular, like not even on the day itself, but usually around it. So like the week before and the week after can be pretty bad, right? And things we talked about before, sad songs, old letters, old pictures. Sometimes you accidentally unblock them on purpose. And so you start seeing posts and you start seeing you start seeing statuses that make you upset, right? Block them back, right? On purpose, right? so that doesn't trigger you anymore, right? Take care of yourself. Do the things that may help you to feel healthy and help you to feel good. Make sure and eat. Try to get as much sleep as you can, right? Healthy sleep. So the regular 8 to 10 hours, not the 15 to 25 or the 15 to 20 hours, right? Do regular hygiene. Make sure and take a bath. Make sure brush your teeth. Try and comb your hair as often as you would regularly do. You know, some of us do comb it. I get that. But if you're a coma, right? Make sure and do that on a regular basis, right? Make sure and like something that I would forget often is to clean my glasses. And so things always appear foggy and I think when I clean my glasses, I actually feel better. I'm like, oh yeah, look how the world is so nice. So if you're somebody who wears glasses and you forget to clean them, like me, do that often, right? It makes the world seem much better. It just gives you that division and it helps you to feel good, right? And remember to exercise, of course. So eat healthy. Oh yeah, eat healthy. So I was saying eat, but eat healthily, right? make sure and eat some veggies, make sure and eat fruits. Try to have as well-rounded meals as possible. Try to have color in your food. So they say if a meal should have either red, orange, yellow, or green, or some of all, right? So color in your food actually helps you to feel better, right? And Sharon, colored bread don't count. We're talking about like
Yeah, we're not talking about anything to do with hobbies.
right? So yeah, surround yourself with positive influences to build your support network, right? Be around people that help you to feel good. It's really common to kind of gravitate, if you're gravitating towards people at all, to gravitate to people who also feel down, also feel depressed, also feel like the world is a horrible place. And what you'll tend to do is kind of pull each other down rather than building each other up. So while it's good to be around people who understand you, it's also good to be around people who will help you to see things in a different light. So your support network should be as many people as possible that are positive, that are not seeing the world the same way that you are seeing it right now. Right? But they have to be willing to listen and hear your side and hear how the world is for you, but be able to tell you, well, yeah, I could see that. However, this is what I see. And my vision is a little different from yours. Right?
I think like people don't really have like, okay, so some people don't have that patience anymore. Like they think like, well, some people could have just assumed this, but some people just think like, you know, you're going through this again. You wasn't just feeling so yesterday.
Right.
And so like I think some of us need to like be more have more empathy.
Right.
And like just try to be that listening ear than just being like, this week coming for you? Oh, like, you know, we have to like take if your friend chose you to be that person, it has to be that your friend holds you at a certain standard, and you all have a close relationship to them. So like, you should like give them that listening ear.
Yeah, definitely.
But
and we'll talk
as something at our age, we are so busy now, more and often that we disregard people feelings. Like we just listen to reply, we don't listen to understand, we don't listen to give insights, we just listen to just be like, oh, that blue, yeah, this one had an orange one, I know. Like, wait, that really, they don't really be like, how it blue, like how it get blue, like wait a minute, blue, like we don't take that time all the time. And I think that's something we need to work on.
Right. And I'm going to touch on that a little bit more when we come to when somebody comes to you and tell you that they're experiencing suicidal thoughts, right? So yeah, you're right. A lot of times when it's about how we interact with somebody who has disclosed to us or confided in us that they are struggling, right? And sometimes, yeah, you're right. We expect the struggle to be over. Like, you didn't tell me about this yesterday. Like, why are you still struggling with this? And that's the worst thing that you could do to somebody, because basically you're telling them, you know, well, just get over it. Like, why is it taking so long? Right? And so, yeah, we're going to talk about that some more in the next part. Right? But you're right. We need to do more of that. Develop new interests. So things that used to be pleasurable may not be giving you as much pleasure anymore, but that doesn't mean that you can't try new things, right? And often trying new things kind of gives you somewhere else to focus, something else to focus on, something else to do, right? And it gives you a sense of meaning, a sense of purpose, right? And especially if you do things like you start doing things for other people. So like you start volunteering, getting involved in community activities, doing things for the people in your neighborhood. then you tend to feel a sense of well-being and like, okay, this is good. I feel like I have a purpose now. And it tends to detract from and distract you from you feeling hopeless and wanting to not be here anymore. Right. And learn to deal with stress in a healthy way. Right. So it involves learning new coping mechanisms. The 5 steps that we talked about before, right? And in case you missed it, let me say it again. Hang on one second. So the five ways are to be active, give your time to others, take notice of your surroundings, connect to other people, so be there, listen, interact with others, and to keep learning, right? So you keep your mind engaged, you keep your emotions engaged, you keep your thoughts and feelings engaged, and you are engaged with the environment around you. And so if you do that and learn those new coping mechanisms and those new ways to deal with the emotions that are happening or the stresses that are happening, then you tend to cope better and not fall again into the type of thought pattern that would lead to suicide being an option. All right. I talked a lot and my voice hurts. So does anybody have any questions about what we just talked about, or any thoughts, any concerns?
I have some things, but I thought you don't want to go and then we talk after.
Okay. So the next thing we're going to talk about is how to help somebody who has expressed to you that they're feeling suicidal, right? And let's see. So we talk about some myths before we go into that, right? So the first myth, really common one, is anybody who talks about suicide is not actually going to do it. You know, they're doing it, they're talking about it for attention, they're talking about it to get their way, right? Complete myth, right? Almost everybody who has attempted suicide has given a warning to somebody else, right? So you shouldn't ignore even indirect references to death, right? So something like somebody saying something like, oh, you'll be sorry when I'm not here, you know, or I can't see any way out, or I don't want to be here anymore. No matter how casually or how jokingly they say it, that can indicate some serious suicidal feelings, right? And so you shouldn't ignore when somebody says that, or kind of play it off as, oh, you're just joking, or, you know, this isn't, you're not going to do anything. You're just doing this for attention, right? It's better to be safe than sorry. Assume that they're going to do it and be like, and they're like, no, I was just joking, rather than assume that they're not going to do it and they weren't joking, right? Second myth, anybody who tries to kill themselves must be crazy, right? And that is the furthest from the truth. Like, most people who are suicidal, who are experiencing suicidal thoughts, are neither psychotic nor insane, right? They're upset, they're grief-stricken, they're depressed, they may be in a level of despair, but these things are not signs of mental illness. They might be signs of mental distress, but they're most likely not signs of mental illness, right? The next one is, if somebody is determined to kill themselves, nothing is going to stop them. And that could be furthest from the truth. Most people don't actually want to die, right? And they actually have very mixed feelings most of the time. Even if you're very severely depressed, you have mixed feelings about death. And you actually fluctuate between wanting to live, wanting to die. And really and truly, they really want the pain to stop. And so what they see as dying is the only option for the pain to stop. But that doesn't mean that if they were given other options, or if they are shown that this is not the only way, the problems that you are experiencing can be solved, suicide no longer becomes that option. So you can be that person to help them see solutions to their problem, right? And they said people, like another myth is that people who die by suicide are unwilling to accept help. I think that's the furthest from the truth. The vast majority of people try to get help before attempting suicide. They try to talk to somebody else. Sometimes they even go to their doctors. They're like, this is how I'm feeling. They might try to seek counseling. So it's a myth that people don't want to get help. The fact is, most of them really do. They just don't know how to, or the people that they've approached haven't been able to help them in the way that they need. Right? And the last one, and I think this one is the most common, that if you talk about suicide, then somebody who wasn't thinking about it would start to think about it. Right? So people are like, I don't want to ask them about suicide because now they'll think about it. And the opposite is actually true. Most likely, if you think that somebody might be suicidal, they've already thought about it, right? And you talking to them will only show them that this is not a taboo subject. This is something that you can open up to me about. This is something that you can talk to me freely about. And so I'm willing to hear you if you are experiencing this. If somebody tells me about suicide and I'm not suicidal, I'll be like, okay, and move on with my life. It's not going to make me suicidal, right? So asking about it is not going to change somebody's mind in the direction of suicide. As a matter of fact, it will probably change their mind in the direction of telling you what's going on and hopefully getting help from you or from somebody that you can direct them to get help. Right? So those are the myths. Right? So we're going to talk about warning signs, because oftentimes afterwards, people who are left behind, sadly, by those who have completed suicide are racked with guilt because they're like, there's something I should have seen, there's something I should have known. This is not your fault. First thing to remember, right? Somebody else hurting themselves is not on you. And the most that you can do is help them and talk with them through the experience. If they opened up to you and you try to get them help, you did the best you could, and that's okay, right? But there are some things that you can look for if you are worried about somebody that's close to you, if you're worried about a friend, a partner, a relative, right? So the first warning sign is talking about it, right? So any talk about it, any talk about dying, any talk about hurting themselves, any talk about wishing that they weren't born, any talk about not wanting to be here anymore, any kind of fascination that is out of the ordinary for that person with death, with dying, with methods of dying, right? If you see this in anyone, then we can tie this as a red flag and be like, okay, we need to have a solid conversation because something is happening, right? Anyone who's seeking out things that are lethal, so randomly asking about pills, asking about knives, trying to buy things that are lethal. They have no plants, but they're going in the agricultural shop, right? They're buying a big bottle of bleach, even though they don't clean anything, right? Anything that's outside of what would be considered normal behavior, right? And seeking out lethal means of doing so. Again, a preoccupation with death, unusual focus on death, right? Writing about death, writing stories about death, telling stories about death, right? Feeling hopeless, feeling helpless, feeling trapped, telling you that things will never get better, things will never change. These are some of the clear warning signs that somebody is having suicidal thoughts, right? Any kind of self-loathing, self-hatred, feeling of worthlessness, guilt, shame, feeling like a burden, like saying things like everybody would be better off without me, or things everyone would be better if I wasn't involved in their lives, or people would feel better if I wasn't around, that kind of thing. That kind of talk, that kind of worthless Self-talk is a big flag, right? This one is huge. Getting their affairs in order. So somebody who never seemed organized about anything would suddenly be talking about legal stuff like wills, um, how to get all their affairs in order. They want to make sure the banking statement, the insurance, everything is all set. And it's like, what? Right? Or they start giving away things that will prize possessions, you know, um, things that you never thought that they would give away, things that are really close and really dear to them. Anytime somebody starts doing that, that's a huge red flag, right? They start saying goodbye. So somebody who has made a decision to commit suicide will often call people that they haven't spoken to in years or in a long time. And they just call to say goodbye, to say, see how things going, but I'm saying goodbye. Or any conversation that ends with, I don't know, we don't know when we'll see each other again, or it feels like this is our last conversation kind of thing. Giant red flag. Anytime that happens, we need to really be on alert. Right? Complete withdrawal. So withdrawal from friends, withdrawal from family, just indicating that they want to be left alone. Now, mind you, withdrawal is a symptom for a lot of things. So withdrawal in and of itself doesn't necessarily mean that they're suicidal, but withdrawal does mean that they're going through some kind of emotional challenge. And so anybody that withdraws, even if you're not worried about suicide, you should check in on them and make sure that they're okay, because withdrawal usually means that something is happening, right? Self-destructive behavior. So they would start drinking a lot more, using a lot more drugs. They might start taking chances, like doing things they would never do, like risky driving, go into, I don't know, go into places that are dangerous for no reason, just doing things that is definitely out of character for them, but it's self-destructive. Like it's going to get them in trouble. They might start fights with people randomly when they've always been a calm person, that kind of thing, right? Sometimes risky sexual behavior. They might be very promiscuous. They might not take care to make sure that they're having safe sex, that kind of thing. So it's like, you should definitely check on what's happening there, right? And a sudden sense of calm. So somebody who was distressed a lot and always talking about the stress that they're under and things are really horrible. They feel hopeless, they feel helpless, suddenly seeming like everything's okay, right? It's like, it feels like a complete turnaround. And they're like, yeah, everything's fine, you know? And they, all of a sudden they go into parties and they've been around a bunch of people. That's something that we look out for, because because a lot of times with just somebody deciding that they're going to end their life, gives them a sense of calm. And so the decision actually helps them to feel better, but it doesn't change that they still want to do it. Right. And so to them, they found the solution to the problem. So there's nothing to worry about anymore. And that's why it would look like that to somebody outside. So to your friends and family, it could actually, to you, it could look like, it feels like it looks like they're getting better. Right? That's still something that we need to watch, because that could mean that they've actually made a decision to hurt themselves. All right. So if you're worried, if you're thinking, if you're like, I've seen these warning signs, or I'm just worried because I hear that things might be bad and you seem to be heading in a particular direction, talk about it. Definitely, definitely, definitely talk to the person, right? It's difficult, and I understand that. But if you're unsure, if that's what they're thinking about, then the only way to find out is to ask. Or the best way, I shouldn't say the only way, but the best way to find out is to ask them directly, right? Yet, and like we talked about before, you can't make them suicidal if they aren't already thinking about it. So they could tell you, no, that hasn't occurred to me. And you can move on from there, right? But if you give them the opportunity to express their feelings, they can feel relieved. They can feel like they finally have somebody to talk to, and it might actually prevent somebody from attempting, right? So you can say things like, I've been feeling concerned about you lately. I've noticed some differences. I'm wondering how you're going. I want to check in because you're not feeling like yourself, right? And so you could basically start a conversation with an expression of concern, like, this is something that is bothering me about you, and I want to make sure that everything's okay, right? You can ask questions like, well, if they say yes, like, this is how I've been feeling. Yes, I've been thinking about hurting myself. You can ask something like, when did you begin feeling like this? Did something happen? Like, what can I do to help right now? Have you thought about getting help? So often they wouldn't even consider that going to counseling is an option. And for us in the LGBTQ community, there is a bigger challenge, I think, to seeking mental health services, right? Because on top of this, just the natural Trinidad stigma of, well, you gotta be mad if you're going by a counselor, or automatically assuming that going by a counselor means you're going to end up in St. Anne's, right? In addition to that, like, LGBTQ plus people have to think about, okay, is my counselor going to be understanding of my sexual orientation? Am I going to be discriminated against? Are they going to even hear me out? Are they going to assume that it's because of my orientation that I'm going through these things? And I was like, no, I'm going through it because I had a breakup like everybody else, right? And so it's even harder. Like, there's more steps involved to get an LGBT person to think about going to therapy. And understandably, like, I get it. Like, when I need to go to therapy, I'm always like, oh gosh, who do I go to? I don't know, because I can't go to myself. So I need to find somebody else to open, and who's willing, and who is not going to see my my status as like, oh, that's one of the challenges we have to work on. Like, no, it's not a challenge. It's just life, right? So I get it, but it is important to seek help, and you telling people to seek help might be the first time that it occurs to them that they could talk to somebody else about what's going on in their heads. All right. Yes, sorry, Kevin, I think. Yes, Kevin said that confidentiality is also a big thing, and that's true. A lot of people are worried about who will know the business if they go to a counselor, and if the counselor is going to be sharing it with their friends and family. Like, gets crazy. I'd walk into my office today, and I could only speak for myself, I guess. And well, the people who are in counseling, who have been trained well, know that confidentiality is part of you being a good psychologist, right? If you start sharing your stories, then the people around you are going to be like, so is that what happens when people go to a psychologist? Like, you just hear all these stories, like, people are going to be talking about my business up in Belmont or wherever, right? I don't know why I picked Belmont, just Belmont. And it erodes the trust between you and the person that is coming to you for help. And so I think it's important for people to understand that the people who are here, who genuinely want to help you, will never say anything about what happened between those four walls. They go in a vault, and I'll tell you honestly, half the time when I leave the office, I forget what people tell me for the day. I going home, like I go, I go down veg. I really don't want to be thinking about what has happened throughout the day. I pick it back up when I go back in the office tomorrow. And that's how it is for a lot of us, you know.
Separate.
Is not, yeah, it's a complete separation. It's not where like me using that as fodder for bacchanal when I go to line with my friends just means that it's going to be it invades my personal life, which I don't want, and two, it that almost never stops in a lineman situation, right? So if I lemon and I talking and people hearing me, that's spreading and Trinidad small, right? So as a therapist, you want to maintain that sense of like, okay, work is work, home is home. I will tell crazy stories about myself. I ain't telling no crazy stories about other people. I have enough, right? So
Jhanah, what I
yeah.
want, like, in relation to what you said, right? You said like persons who are trained well, right? Not
Mhm.
everybody could afford to pay to go to see someone.
Right.
So why aren't we as a nation putting persons who are trained well in the public facilities where people tend to go when they can't afford to go to the private? Because a lot of public persons, most times they impose what they believe, and like
Mhm.
sometimes then relations to um well, okay, so say for example that if I tell them that I believe in God, so
Right.
part of my treatment, somewhere along the line at the end it's gonna be like, so you know you believe in God, so go to God and pray to God and ask God what's going on. Like
Mhm.
sometimes that's not the answer you need to hear at the time.
Right.
That's not what you want to hear. You know you can go to God and pray to God. I don't need to come here for you to tell me to go to
Right.
God and pray to God. So like
Mhm.
I just think like in that aspect that we provide a service as a nation, but not everybody is as equipped or as empathetic or as understanding to know when not to bring in religion or God. I mean, so
Right.
for some people it works, but like
Mhm.
you can't use that fixed template for
Right.
everyone that they want to ask them about who you believe in, and then at the end or somewhere in the middle when things kind of
Mhm.
get sticky, you remind them, don't forget you have God.
Right.
You know, like I
Mhm.
think like if we're gonna provide a service to the public, that we should have well educated and well equipped persons to carry out the job.
Yeah. I mean, that's it's a convoluted question and a long answer. Um, but part of the answer is that the it's what the government is willing to pay, right? So, and part of the answer is also most of the people who work in the public service have been educated here, and there's a huge disparity in the programs across universities. So there were universities that were really good about it, and there were universities that have a lot lower standard in terms of teaching people about dealing with different situations, dealing with LGBT people, for example. I've met people who have gotten their masters and have never had a class on LGBT people, and that is insane to me,
But then we
right?
need to standardize the education system then. Like people shouldn't be getting
Right.
into if they're not reaching certain criteria.
Exactly. Right. And so and therein lies the problem. So we don't have, so for example, in England, there's a board of psychologists that kind of deals with um, everything. They deal with get people getting licenses, they deal with education, monitoring and making sure that the people that are working are actually doing what they say, and they're practicing in a way that is that is certified, and that has been shown to work with um, with clients. That happens in the States, it happens in Barbados, it does not happen here, right? And so the the common saying among us is like, well, anybody could hang up a shingle, and it's true. Anybody can. Anybody could say that they're a psychologist. There's nobody that checks them, right? And so what we really need for all of this to happen is for either the what's it called? Psychological Association of Trinidad and Tobago. I forget the name right now, but for them to actually do what they're supposed to do, which is to regulate everybody and make sure that people meet a certain standard before being able to call themselves psychologists, so that when the government hires them, they only hire people of a certain standard. You understand what I mean? Because right.
Facebook.
Sure.
So the first one is from Kishona. She said, willingness to go to a counselor is one thing, but finding the funds to go is another. Are there voluntary therapists in Trinidad outside of what they offer at the hospitals, where they center everything around religion, primarily Christianity?
Volunteer psychologists, probably not, but I know for sure that most of the community organizations that are around or funded by LGBT people, so Friends for Life, Silver Lining, CAISO, and I think the Alliance for Justice and Diversity also, if you reach out to them, what they try to do is, as much as possible, help people when they can. And so what they would do is kind of hook you up with a counselor that they know is LGBTQ friendly, or there's a safe space for them. Oftentimes, if you cannot afford, they will either make an arrangement with the counselor or pay for the sessions themselves. So if you're a member of this community, what you can try to do is go to these organizations and they will help hook you up as best as they can. Now, to be fair, they're underfunded, and so they may not be able to help everybody as soon as they need it, but they do try to help everybody that they can, right? But to say that there's a, I think they've been trying, but to get people to volunteer with the amount of need that is out there is really difficult. People have that's a lot of time to dedicate, and it's hard. It's difficult for people sometimes, right?
So, Lily said, I think one of the hardest things about mental health and suicide, I'm guessing that's suicide, is the actual reaching out. Too many times people say to reach out when we feel that way, but being able to actually reach out or have the strength to do that is hard sometimes, especially if people rely on you to reach out rather than check up on you.
Right. And so and thanks, Lily, because I was going to get to that a little bit later.
Yeah.
Right. So, and one of the things that we always tell people, if someone around you, so we tell people who are hurting to reach out, but if you are around somebody and they kind of disappear off your radar for some reason, I think you should take it upon yourself to check in on them, because they may not always have the energy or the emotional output that they need to reach out. So call, send a text, send a message. If you know where they live in, knock on the door, call by the gate, show up. And so that is one of the things that we talk about in terms of in terms of helping those who are struggling. If you know someone is struggling and they tell you that if they tell you that they're struggling, or if they've kind of just disappeared and it's not because they're busy, or you don't know if they're busy, actually, check on your close friends, check on your family members, check on people that you've been around, your acquaintances. Like I say, if you know where they live in, pong on the gate, knock on the door, so that they know that you care. All right. Are those all the questions?
So far.
So far, okay. So we were talking about questions. And sorry, so we talked about the questions that you can ask and then things that you can say that actually help. You're telling them that they're not alone, that you are here for them. Telling them that they may not believe it now, but the way that they're feeling will change. And you may not be able to understand exactly how they feel, but you care and you want to help, right? And then the last thing, and I think one of the most important ones is when you want to give up, tell yourself that you will hold off for a day, an hour, a minute, however long you can manage. Hold off, call me, call someone, right? If the person is feeling like they want to do this now, then it's like, you want to do it now, call me now, talk to me instead, talk to your mom instead, talk to your partner instead, anything else other than committing this act. Just give it some time because, like we said, feelings change. They're not consistent. How you're feeling now is not how you may feel in an hour. And so if you hold off, you might change your mind. And if you could get them to hold off, it will help immensely. Right? So be yourself whenever you're talking to a suicidal person. Don't try to be a professional. Don't try to be somebody who is worldly and knows everything. Just tell them, all you need to do for them right in that moment is let them know that you care and that they're not alone, right? You don't need the right words. You just need them to understand that you are concerned and you want what's best for them. Right?
Sometimes they don't even need words. They just need you to be there.
Yeah.
Just your presence is something.
Exactly. I mean, there's this
could make it worse. Just being there, that they know that they have you. They know they have that person there. Yeah.
And they may not be willing to talk right that moment, but the fact that you're present, right, is all that they need, right? Listen, and we talked about this earlier, letting your friend vent, let them unload their feelings, no matter how negative the conversation seems. The fact that they're actually talking to you is a good thing. So as negative as they be in, just listen, hear them out. Don't try to tell them, oh gosh, you don't need to feel so, look how good you have it. If people have it worse, that's the worst thing you can tell somebody. Like somebody else have it worse than you.
At this moment, you don't want to know about anybody. It's about
exactly.
me. Like I have it worse right now.
Exactly. Right? So please don't tell them.
Like comparing and contrasting other people. I know other people have it worse, but what about me? Like right now?
Exactly. And it's important to validate, like, whether other people have it worse or not. The point is you don't feel well, and that is important. Right? You don't feel good.
So
you
because
feel like
other people have it worse, I so magically feel okay. Well, yeah.
No, that's not how it works. Right? So make sure you listen, make sure, and don't invalidate them. Don't tell them that they shouldn't be feeling this way. What you want to tell them is that I know that you're feeling this way now, it will get better. Right? Be sympathetic and not judgmental. Right? So try not to tell them, well, why are you feeling so, like, what's wrong with you? Right? You're a horrible person.
It's like one of my questions, like since we here, we just ask it one time, right?
Yeah.
So they say that you're going to tell somebody it's going to get better, right? But in the sense of somebody, so the question is, how can you tell somebody who's feeling hopeless to be hopeful? Like, how can I tell them that? How I can tell them that it's going to get better? And right now, all they're seeing is despair. That is all they feel. And like, is it that I telling them, like, I giving them false hope?
No, you're not giving them false hope at all, because
But what if it takes 2 or 4 months later for them to get better and they don't get better, like, as fast as they think that I tell them that they will get better?
Oh, you don't give them a time frame. Okay. 1. And 2, like, depression and suicidal thoughts are not a line. Like, you don't feel the same way every day, every minute, every hour. it fluctuates, it goes up, it goes down. There will be things that help you to feel a little better in the moment and kind of bring you away from that brink, away from that edge. And so you saying that things will get better, it could mean that things will get better in like 5 minutes because I bring in your ice cream and we gonna sit down and watch, I don't know, like the worst movie ever and laugh at how stupid it is. And and
Thank
that
you, Sharon.
and that gonna be what gonna help them feel better in the moment. Giving them hope is not, by Sharon, giving them hope is not false hope. Giving them hope is helping them to understand that just because they don't see the solution right now, it doesn't mean that it's not there. Right? And maybe in not doing what you're thinking about doing right now, we could figure out a way to the solution. I might not have the answer, but I might be able to help you figure out the answer because I could see things from a different angle than you are seeing them right now.
Yeah, I could probably shine a new light on
Exactly. On whatever the issue is. All right. So yeah. Did I say offer hope already? Offer hope, because that's what we're talking about, right? Take a person seriously, right? Don't dismiss them. Don't be like, oh, you're not depressed. What are you talking about? Or and you was just laughing like 5 minutes ago. How you mean you're not feeling good and you're feeling to die or whatever? Like, don't, like I said, it's not linear. Depressed people don't feel depressed 24/7, right? And little blips don't mean that they're not depressed anymore, right? So don't dismiss them. Listen, and take them seriously, especially if they say something like, "I'm thinking about hurting myself" or "I'm thinking about dying," right? So some don'ts. So those are the do's. These are the don'ts. Do not argue with them, right? Don't be like, "We want to die for," like make it into this big thing, right? Right? So like arguing with them is not going to be helpful at all, right? It's not going to change their mind, definitely, because nobody listens to an angry person. Anybody who's shouting at you, you don't tune them out a long time, right? Don't act shocked. Don't lecture. Don't give them a lecture like, oh, life is so sacred and you should be taking it. Sometimes people bring God into it and that's not helpful, you know? So lecturing them on how that's okay. Lecturing them on how good life is, or like, taking a life is going to be the worst thing in the world. Like, that's not being sympathetic, that's not being open-minded, that's not listening, right? And it's actually, they're going to turn them off. They're not going to hear you when you're trying to help them, right? Do not, and this is important, do not promise confidentiality. Do not promise that you're not going to tell anybody, because you will. You will have to in order to help them. And you're going to break a promise to somebody that trusts you, right? So it's important when talking about this to tell them, if you tell me something that I can't promise, that I'm not going to tell anybody what's going on and I'm going to keep this a secret, right? Because you will either be struggling with knowing what's going on and not being able to tell anyone, or struggling with knowing that you made a promise and feeling like you have to break it, right? And it's really important. Sometimes they do ask you to keep it a secret and to not tell anyone, but you really cannot promise that, right? Because they will put you in a place where you have to struggle now with their feelings, right? And it will make helping them something that you have to think about and juggle, right? Let's see. Don't offer ways to fix it. Don't offer ways to fix the problem. Don't offer ways to, don't offer advice. Don't make them feel like they have to justify why they're suicidal. Like, you know, what you have to be suicidal about? And you have a house, and you have food, and you have a roof over your head, right? Don't make them feel like they have to justify it, right? Um, and definitely don't blame yourself for other people's depression. You can't fix it. You're not to blame for it. And all you can do is try to help them through this crisis, right? So blaming yourself is only going to bring you into a place where you feel like you'll get enmeshed in dealing with this depression and dealing with this suicide, and neither person can find a way to move forward, right? So this is not on you. This is not your fault. This is your friend and they're dealing with a situation. You can help them as best as you can, but it's not your obligation to fix their depression or to fix their suicidal thoughts. All right. And let's see. So that was the first one. If there is a crisis, right? Crisis meaning that there's a plan, right? They have opportunity, meaning that they have access to weapons, they have access to drugs, they have access to things that can be lethal, right? They have an intention and they have a specific time that is immediate, right? That is crisis. Talk done, we moving on to action mode, right? And action mode in Trinidad is basically take them to the nearest emergency accident and emergency center, if that's your local health center or if that's the hospital, right? Especially if it's at night, which is when most people tend to try to carry out suicidal plans, right? Because everything else would not be available during those hours, right? There's if you are not in the same place as them, so if you are not in the same home or you're not able to get to them quickly, right? You need to call someone, either call someone in the home if they're not living alone, or somebody who is closer, who can get to them more quickly than you can. And if those people aren't available, then you need to call emergency services. So you need to call police, call the ambulance, and have them go to the home so that they can actually help the person deal with the crisis that they're in right now. Now in Trinidad, there's a law where if somebody from outside the home calls, the police can't go into the home unless somebody is there to let them in. So the person themselves will either have to let them in or a family member will have to let them in. And that's important to remember, because we could call and send police, but they won't go in unless somebody opens the door for them, right? And ambulance services as well. They won't go in unless somebody opens the door for them if you didn't call from inside the home, right? So that's why it's important to get in touch with a family member or somebody who can be there to help, to talk them down, to help them if they have actually done something already, right? And these are some questions you can ask. Do you have a plan? Do you have what you need to carry out your plan, right? Do you know when you will do it? And do you intend to die or do you intend to commit suicide, right? If the answers to those questions are yes, then that person is in imminent danger, which means that they're probably going to hurt themselves really soon, right? Usually by the time that they've decided. So they might say it's 9 o'clock tonight. So, oh no, 9:30 tonight. So you have half an hour, 20 minutes to get them the help that they need, right? If somebody is imminent and you can get to them, even if you've called the authorities, you should go. Do not leave a suicidal person alone. And even if the crisis passes, like today, they were like, yeah, I'm gonna do it today, and it passes, you still shouldn't leave them alone for some time, because they might spin back around too and come back around to like, okay, yesterday I didn't get around to it, but today might be a good day, right?
Contingency plan.
Contingency plan, exactly, right? So don't leave them alone, even if it's like you'll have to take shifts as a group of friends, as friends and family members, kind of taking turns, having them go from home to home, whatever it is, right? Offer help and support,
I
right?
think like in this instance, we need to like show the importance of having support as well, like with your friends, because like in the Caribbean, most parents, if you come and tell them you're feeling a certain way, they can ask you, "Oh, why you feeling so? Nothing wrong with you. You have everything. We tell me you're feeling so poor. We talking about." So
Right.
like tonight showing me the importance of friends, as you say, like have people to reach out to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's important that we have people to reach out to talk to, because not everybody has understanding parents, and
True.
most of our parents are in the as a city generation. I can never remember their generation, but their generation is the generation that their mind will change. This what they know and this how it is.
Right.
So if they know that we're talking about you feeling depressed, so you know it's depressed, you want anything to be depressed about, you don't have nothing. So all they see is like what going on with them, and you not going through what they're going through. So how you could feel, you have no reason to feel that way. So
Right.
like we need to understand that we have our peers, and probably your parents wouldn't be understanding, but your friend parents would, and
Right.
they could help you.
And also we have to remember that as a community, we tend to choose our families, even if
Yes.
our biological families aren't as involved in our lives as they probably should be, right? We tend to have another family that is really close to us and that we've chosen and we've handpicked. And so when I say family, I also mean your chosen family. I don't only mean your biological family, right? Because oftentimes we live with our chosen family. There's a whole group of us living in the house, right? And we all look after one another, and we all make sure that everybody's okay. All right. And let's see. So those are the three most important ones, right? Which is speak up if you're worried, right? Respond quickly in a crisis, and offer help and support, right? If you can manage to do those three things, then you have made a big difference in the life of somebody who is really, really struggling, right? And it's important to remember that this is just somebody who is struggling to cope with whatever life has handed them up to this day, right? And just because they're struggling doesn't mean that something's wrong with them, right? They'll just struggle, and hopefully we'll be able to help them figure it out so that they could cope better in the future, right? Watch any time and a tired talk. So it is 10 minutes past 9. So I'm gonna leave the next 9 to 10 minutes, right? Open for any questions, any thoughts, any concerns that anybody else wants to interject, and to in case I missed anything, because I'm not perfect. I could have missed one, right? So the floor is open and you can ask me anything.
Dave has something to say. Hi, Dave. So, Jhanah, I have a question, right?
Sure.
Until Dave come
Mm-hmm.
when we talk about PTSD, is PTSD subjective, like anything could cause it, or is there like a certain criteria to say that it is PTSD?
Yeah, there's a criteria. But so basically criteria is trauma, right? And so the trauma, what constitutes a trauma is something that is unexpected, something that may threaten your life or the life of somebody close to you, something that is highly impactful, and something that is completely negative, right? And so when we think of PTSD, well, when we thought of PTSD, it was like people who were involved in like really high stress situations like war, soldiers, right? But what we've come to understand over time is that anybody can experience trauma and anybody can experience these extremely stressful reactions.
So my trauma probably wouldn't be trauma for you.
Maybe, yeah.
Like
and yeah, kind of like, but so some people have more resilience than others. Like some things maybe like some things are universally traumatic, right? So assault is usually universally traumatic. Any kind of threat to life. So if you've been robbed at gunpoint, for example, kidnapped, and again, sorry, huge trigger warning to anybody who's listening, right? Talking about trauma. So yeah, these are universally traumatic. Anytime there's a threat to life, it's universally traumatic. Some people are okay dealing with trauma, and some people go on to develop some stress symptoms as a result of trauma, right? So trauma itself isn't subjective, but the way that people react to it can be subjective.
And like with stigma, like how it could be associated with like a sign of disgrace. Like how can we help our friends, persons of the LGBT community? How can we help them experiencing stigma?
I mean, what we do now is we kind of stick up for one another, right? And what we can do is create safe spaces. So what the community organizations are trying to do is change the wider view, change society's view of us, right? With education, with just being visible, understanding that we are a part of Trinidad and Tobago. We are here, we're not going anywhere, right? And even if you throw all of us who out here now, people are just gonna keep coming because queer people are born every day, right? So it's not like you could get rid of us and, magically the queer people are gonna disappear from the island or islands, right? And so all we can do is educate the people around us and hopefully help gain allies so that they continue to educate other people around them, right? And like I said, stick together in groups, be around the people that accept you for who you are. And hopefully what we will do eventually is change it. And we've seen it's happening where we're changing how many people see us as deserving of being here, deserving of basic human rights. And hopefully that will just continue to permeate. I speak a lot with teenagers, and teenagers now are like, yeah, everybody's gay, like whatever, and, and so
listen, you see that generation, and they can't have a life,
right?
They're gonna have it because the generation above them will be us, and
right. And so I think it's getting better as people are more accepting, and they teach their children to be more accepting, and so they grow up with this accepting mindset that the way I see the world is not necessarily the way everybody sees the world, and that's okay. And so we're working on it. It's slow, it's hard, and we may not see the change that we want to see in our lifetime, but we're making it easier and better for the ones that are coming after us.
So in most of like with anxiety and depression, we talked about avoidance. is avoidance like, does the person know that they're avoiding things? Is there signs we could like hint to them, or like when they going through their treatment that they can realize, okay, avoiding certain things? Is it blatant, or is it something that they passively do?
It can be both actually. So for example, with trauma, people tend to avoid. So it starts off really, it can start off really specific. So let's say you, I can tell you an example. This person was walking down Charlotte Street on Wednesday evening, and they were attacked by, just randomly, out of the blue, by a homeless person who decided that they didn't like the shoes that they were wearing that day, right? So no reason for it. No, there's no rhyme, no reason, nothing. They're just walking on the road like they've done a million times before, right? So the first thing that they started avoiding was that part of Charlotte Street, right? Because that's where it happened. So obviously they don't want to be around it. But what they started recognizing is that as time passed, like the things that they will avoid would get bigger and bigger. So they started avoiding all of Charlotte Street. They started avoiding streets next to it, Prince Street, Henry Street, Frederick Street, and it's just like it keeps widening and widening and widening, right? And if you don't, like at first, it's a protective thing. Like your mind is protecting it. It's like, okay, something bad happened there, so don't ever go back there, right? At first. The problem is like it ceases being specific and it starts widening out. So it's all streets or all pavements or all homeless people or all men, or like, and so that's why so avoidance could be really intense, in that you could, for sure you're avoiding something. Sometimes you might not know exactly what you're avoiding anymore because it's become so wide. Does that make sense?
And is it sometimes like you don't know the severity of the avoidance?
No, people do understand the severity of the avoidance. It's just that the avoidance makes them feel safer and makes them feel less anxious, more comfortable.
Okay.
And so it's like until it starts interfering with functioning. So now you can't walk down Lower Port of Spain, right? And you need to go to Lower Port of Spain for certain things. So it starts interfering with your functioning. It starts interfering with being able to get the best deals. It starts interfering with life, so and that's usually when they start to see it as a problem. It's like, oh, it's gone beyond protection to now interfering with everything.
So I wanted to talk about isolation, right? So within isolation, right, what if while this person, we talk about don't isolate yourself, the importance of not isolating yourself,
right, and
having people, right? But what if someone doesn't have anyone, but in this time of isolation, as we say, sometimes, sometimes they sleep all day and sometimes they can't sleep all day. What if while they can't sleep, instead of like loading, they put it into like they do something positive, like instead of like beating up themselves, I can't sleep. So for example, what if they're in school and they take that time to study, or they do some learning, they just do something that they like? Is that good? Or
it can be usually if you're not feeling too optimistic or hopeful, studying makes sense, right? Because to you it's like, what's studying for? Like nothing gonna be good anyway, so I'm not going to, and so studying isn't something that is positive in that particular field, in that particular time.
It's positive to them.
If it is, I mean, yeah, I have yet to meet somebody who told me, yeah, studying really helps. But no, you're the first one. Right? But yeah, a lot of times, the only thing that I would say is if so, for example, somebody who can't sleep all night and they have things to do during the day, they often can't function during the day, right? And so doing things at night is still not helping them to function during the day. And so it's about being able to correct that sleep disturbance in whatever way. But you're right, if you're doing something positive, like not just like zoning out, watching TV or watching the clock, trying to figure out when you're gonna finally fall asleep, right? Because the thing is, what they usually tell you for insomnia is if after 20 minutes you haven't fallen asleep, get up. Because laying on the bed is just going to make you anxious about sleeping, and it's going to make the whole situation worse. So get up, do something relaxing, and then you could always try, when you feel sleepy, then try to go back to sleep again. So I don't know if studying is relaxing to you, but if it is, that might be something that you could do.
I think like any aspect that I am an overachiever, so like I know if I study now, I'll this. I don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea what it is, but it's something I've done when I was younger.
Right.
Like like it's something I've done when I was young.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can sleep, I'll go and study something.
Right. Yeah.
You know, but I look at the time, so I don't know if you continue asking my questions or.
You have plenty of questions again? No, just joking. Yeah, we can continue.
So, well, one main something that I want to talk about, like the others, not really. But can you teach us, the community, some open-ended conversations to talk to someone when they come to us?
Right. So I think we mentioned this before. Like if they've come and they've said like they're thinking about hurting themselves, or when they come to us and say that they're struggling.
Us? Can you go over it with us?
Yeah, sure. So some of the things that are really helpful sometimes can be, I care about you and I really want you to feel better, right? So tell me what I can do to help. How often do you need me to check in on you, right? Telling them something like, call me if you need me, right? Kind of gives them the impression that now I have to pick up the phone and actually call somebody if I need help. Whereas knowing, for example, that you're gonna call them every day at 4 o'clock, right? So they know for sure, well, at 4 o'clock, there's somebody coming or somebody who is calling. So if I could make it to 4, I'll be okay. Does that make sense? Right? So taking like some responsibility on yourself to kind of check in rather than telling them, well, I hear. If you need anything, just call me. Right? Which sounds good, but really and truly, when to somebody who's struggling, it's kind of like, but that's so much energy, because it takes a lot of energy for them to pick up the phone and call somebody. Telling them that they could tell you anything, telling them that you're willing to listen and you want to hear what they have to say, right? And no topic is off limits. You can talk about anything. Nothing is taboo, right? I'm trying to think. I don't know. I'm not sure if I answer your question fully.
Yeah, you did. So, lastly, right? As the person in a situation, when someone is talking to you and you explain that sometimes some responses could be like overwhelming, like you don't argue, you don't question, you don't say, so why are you feeling so today? What making you feel so today? You have any triggers? Right. Oh, wait, I wanted to say something about triggers. So like, I think like us, like we have to understand like with triggers, like triggers is not something taboo. Like it's okay to have and know your triggers. Cause like I feel like some people doesn't wanna like associate like, yeah, this trigger me. Like they feel bad about it. I think that's something like we need to put forward and we need to like know like, yes, it's good to know your triggers because that can help control the way you feel. That can help me feel better. So like I think that's something we need to do. I've met a lot of people who don't like to discuss what trigger them. Like not like they have to discuss it, but it's something that they feel like they're broken because they have triggers.
Well, all of us have triggers, right? That's the thing. Like everybody have a pet peeve or something that they really don't like to discuss or makes them emotional, or so having a trigger is a human thing, right? I think what people don't really like to talk about are triggers that have really big emotional attachments to them, right? And it could be two reasons. One, they really don't want to talk about it because talking about it brings up feelings that they can't deal with in the moment. So, like, you don't want to bring up something that would have them be extremely sad at a time when they're getting ready to write an exam, for example, or like going for a job interview and now you want to talk about
Time and place.
something that happened, like no, I
Yeah.
don't want to talk about my triggers, right? Also, a trigger is a very personal thing, and so it has to be somebody that they trust. You can't expect somebody to just trust you with their triggers,
Exactly.
right? That's something that you honestly have to earn. You have to earn their trust for them to be willing to talk and be vulnerable, because it's a very vulnerable thing. Because if you give somebody access to your triggers, that gives them the option and the opportunity to use your triggers in a way that could be hurtful, right? And so it takes a deep level of trust to open up and reveal your triggers to somebody, right? And so to just expect it is kind of like expecting somebody to hand you the keys to their house and now meet them. Like, no, I don't know, I don't give you my keys. Like, call, knock.
Not my keys, not my keys. But not somebody else.
Exactly.
Yeah, so like back to the last point when I was saying like how could the person express to someone that okay, you're overwhelming me right now. You're not helping me feel better without getting irritable. Because
they're
to
gonna
be
be
honest,
irritable, honestly.
if somebody do me that, I get irritable one time, I don't say nothing. Somebody will basically say I would trip off because like I feel like you're attacking me, like give me a break. So like how we could say that in a better way, like a nicer way.
You don't have to be nice about it, honestly.
Okay, great.
Especially because usually is what they are doing is something that's making you feel worse, right?
Yes.
And so it's not necessarily about being nice. You could be like, there's a healthy way to communicate it and there's an unhealthy way to communicate it. So shouting at them, unhealthy, they're not gonna listen, right? But saying something along the lines of, okay, this is what is happening right now is not helpful to me, and I think we need to stop this conversation, right? I need a few minutes, let me walk away and come back. If you're on the phone, like, okay, this conversation is not really being helpful, so I'm gonna hang up. Maybe we could talk at a different time. Like, essentially end the conversation, right? Because once those things start happening, you're not going to be in a frame of mind to listen to them, even if they calm down. So it's better to just separate yourself, give yourself some time to kind of emotionally come back from that, and then reach out to somebody else.
Okay. Do you have any closing remarks?
Closing, no.
Okay.
I thought these were my closing remarks. No, essentially.
No, essentially that's okay.
No.
Okay, so Jhanah, can I ask a quick question? Maybe you covered it before because I had to step away.
Right.
But as someone who's lost 4 friends to suicide, did you get a chance to advise on how survivors like us come to terms? I mean, I know I went through my own process, which is generally maybe some quick remarks on how survivors deal with it and what they may be going through as well.
I did touch on it briefly, but not in depth. But usually the first thing is guilt. How did this happen? Why did I not see it? What could I have done differently? They usually go over however way back in your head to try and figure out, like, at what point could I have done something different? And I think the biggest thing to work towards and to understanding is that this is not your fault. None of what happened is on you, right? If you tried to help, you did the best that you could. And the person did what they wanted to do and what they needed to do in the moment, right? So the first thing is about forgiving yourself, letting go of that guilt, making sure that you understand for yourself that there was nothing different that you could have done, right? And usually it would be good for you to get some help. So seek some counseling in terms of dealing, because we would consider that a traumatic experience, right? So you could be suffering from some PTSD, or some closer to the event, we call it acute stress disorder. And if it continues long term, it's post-traumatic stress disorder. And so those are things that you really need to talk to a professional to deal with. So if you could, definitely talk to a counselor, talk to a psychologist, talk to somebody who works in the mental health industry, because that's something that you will need to work through in order to be able to get to a place where you feel that you can grieve without the guilt, and you can grieve without feeling as though there was something that you could have done differently. I don't know if that helps, if that answers your question.
Yes, thank you very much for sharing.
Yeah.
Jhanah, can you tell us how we can reach out to you?
Oh, me, yeah. So my practice is, I'm just kidding. My practice is called Central Psychological Services. And currently, because of all the restrictions, I'm totally online. So it doesn't matter where you are, you can actually have sessions with me. So my phone number is 319-9350. All right, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, under Central Psychological Services. I also have a website. So Google is your best tool without me actually having to write down everything. So and you can also make online appointments, talk to me over the phone. I try to be as available as possible. If I don't answer, I'll call you back. I promise.
Okay. So that, Jhanah.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions? Any concerns? So Kevin said this was a very enlightening experience as well as informative, Jhanah.
Thank you, Kevin. I tried to, I know I pack a lot of information into a short space of time. So what I can do is maybe send the PowerPoint to Pride.
Yeah, we'll appreciate that.
So
thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And y'all can, well, yeah, you can always find me at my practice or online, and we can discuss more stuff if you if you need to talk some more about what we talked about today.
I honestly thought it was really good within the 2 hours. It was a lot, but it didn't feel like a lot, and we learned a lot, and that is our goal for today. So we really appreciate it. We are really grateful. So if anybody doesn't have any more questions, this is where I leave you all.
It's so sad.
But I thank everyone who joined with us today. And even if this is your first session with us, don't be alarmed. Everything is recorded and it's up already. So y'all can just binge watch tonight. So don't worry about it. I'd just like to thank everybody for joining on, thank everybody for coming on the Zoom. And especially I'd like to thank Jhanah for being here with us tonight. Thank you so much. And I would like to say thanks for being that bridge in the gap in our community and filling that gap with that service, because a lot of people is seeking it, and now that you are here, they know who's Jhanah now, and they can reach out to Jhanah,
I mean,
you know.
To be fair, the older people knew who I was. It's just the younger group that need to find out now.
I don't know, but I'm so happy I met you tonight. This is awesome. So yeah, I'm really happy I met you, and I will be contacting you because we have an event that we think will be great soon.
All right.
So So thank you, thank you, thank you. Don't forget to tune on tomorrow. Tomorrow is games night. So I hope you'll come in to play games, we chilling. We come in with like a nice little snack, online games, trivia. We come in to relax after our we could say that, you know, our day of this is our tutorial. This is our lectures, and tomorrow we relaxing. Don't forget to follow PrideTT on all social media platforms. You could go on our website for more information. And as me being the vice chairman of UNIPride, I would also have to say, don't forget to follow UNIPride on all platforms. We are an upcoming LGBT group that supports and represents the youth and the tertiary persons within our country. We also like to believe we are the bridge within the gaps as bridging the younger generation with our pioneers, that we're gonna come together and make a change. So yeah, follow us. Don't forget, if you want, you can always volunteer with PrideTT. You can volunteer and join UNIPride as well. And guys, I had so much fun with you all tonight and today. And I look forward to this again. And I'm just really, really happy how today turned out, and hope to connect with everybody soon. So good night.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Makisa. On behalf of the entire management committee, we have to publicly thank you and commend you for being a trooper. You volunteered to do this for everyone, and not just because you are a registered nurse, but you definitely have passion for saving lives. So thank you on behalf of all of us. We love you, and you did such an amazing job. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much on behalf of all the guys and girls.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Take care, everyone. Be safe.
Bye, guys.